How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather Spawn Drop. That was today. It's December 15th, 2021, and today we're, of course, going to focus on the extreme severe weather outbreak that's currently happening in the Midwest and could bring life-threatening tornadoes throughout many states in the Midwest, as we'll be taking a very close and in-depth look at that. And we'll also be talking about the next two snowstorms that will impact the West Coast as well as the Northeast later this weekend. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the current radar in the Midwest right now. And of course, you see that this radar is at around, I'd say, 4:30 at this time. So and we're already beginning to see the severe weather extend through Nebraska and as far south as Kansas. As you see that in the yellow shades, in the yellow marks or shapes, you see that we're under severe weather, we're under a severe thunderstorm warning, and we also have tornadoes warnings issued in Nebraska. So if you're right just to the south and west of Sioux City, you need to pay close attention to these tornado warnings, because a tornado is very imminent if you're in a tornado warning. And you see that outside of that, if you look at the red outlines, those represent tornado watches, as there's elevated risk, a very high risk of tornadoes associated with these thunderstorms, and it's as a result of just very strong winds aloft. And just a ton of instability for the winds aloft in the atmosphere. The upper level winds will be a lot stronger, and we're seeing a stark difference when it comes to the wind direction and wind speed with height. So that will definitely create a higher possibility of tornadoes throughout the Midwest, extending through Iowa and extending as far north as Minnesota as well. So Minneapolis will need to pay close attention to this. Des Moines will need to pay close attention to this, and even a lot of Nebraska and Omaha. And right now, Lincoln is currently experiencing a derecho type thunderstorm. So you need to pay close attention to this, because tornadoes are likely associated with these lines of thunderstorms. And we're even seeing tornado warnings being issued right around Manhattan, Kansas. So you need to pay close attention to that and make sure to take cover. Go at the lowest area of your house to stay away from any potential projectiles that could impact your home during a tornado. Make sure to stay at the lowest ground possible of your household right around Kansas, because a tornado warning is issued, and it should last until 4 p.m. Central Time, which is around 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you need to pay close attention to that throughout Kansas for a tornado warning issued for your area. But you see that if we were to take a more broader look at how the low pressure system looks like in general, it looks very much like a typical mid-latitude cyclone you see. However, it's quite an interesting mid-latitude cyclone, because typically with mid-latitude cyclones, I don't see the area of rain on the eastern side of a mid-latitude cyclone be this narrow. So it's quite interesting of a storm, as we're seeing pretty much only one area where all the thunderstorm activity is located, and this is pretty much, you could pretty much define this as a derecho type thunderstorm event. So because we're seeing a long line of thunderstorms that it is primarily severe embedded within each squad line of thunderstorms. So you need to prepare for just a high likelihood of severe weather if you're within the line of this derecho, because the thunderstorms aren't really scattered. They're pretty much all aligned in one area. So this is something you want to pay close attention to. Thunderstorms are likely, tornadoes are likely associated somewhere in this derecho. So in the Midwest, you need to pay close attention to this. And another thing I want to point out too is look at the stark temperature contrast, which is extremely concerning, because when we see a temperature contrast this stark, that typically means that there's just going to be a a crazy amount of lift associated with this trough, because if we were to take a look, you see that to the east of this line of thunderstorms, you're seeing temperatures in the 70s, but if you only go several miles to the west, you're in the 20 to 30 degree range. I mean, look at this stark contrast. In this area, you're experiencing 61 degree temperatures, but only I'd say around 40 miles to the west, the temperatures drop down to the 30s. So that's an insane amount of unstable air in this area of the Midwest, as that's definitely creating enough lift for not only severe thunderstorms to occur, but very strong tornadoes, because we're seeing strong wind shear with height, and that's really gonna induce a very high likelihood of tornadoes as it moves eastward. So that's definitely concerning, because when we see this much instability, it pretty much guarantees we're gonna see a major severe weather threat, because that cold, very dense air is going to force that lighter air to the east further upwards, and that's going to create just a rapid amount of lift, and the air molecules are going to be very buoyant to the east of this cold front. So that's definitely very concerning. If we were to take a look at the severe weather outlook provided from the National Weather Service, you see that we're expecting to experience a moderate threat of severe weather, which is pretty much considered a major threat of severe weather. You're in the dark reds in Iowa, as well as southeastern Minnesota is involved, and pretty much if you're right around Minneapolis, you're very close to experiencing a very high risk of severe weather. I'd say you're right between the enhanced risk to slight risk, but I'd say severe weather is more around a moderate risk right around Minneapolis, so you need to pay close attention to that. And in Des Moines, you're in the extreme risk of severe weather, so make sure to prepare for a possibility of tornadoes in case it does happen, because there is a pretty high risk for today throughout the Midwest for tornadoes. If you were to take a look at that, you see that in areas 25 miles away from your point, you have around 10% chance of a tornado and 45% chance of severe wind damage, and around 5% of hail, as this doesn't seem like there's going to be a major hail threat, but the primary threat associated with this trough moving through will be the wind and tornadoes, and that's as a result of just how strong the winds are. That's going to create just strong wind shear for tornadoes to occur, but not necessarily an extreme hail threat. So it's definitely something to keep in mind, that this will primarily be very potent this should be a very severe weather threat when it comes to wind as well as tornadoes. So if we were to take a look at the radar, this is as of 4 p.m. We're past that point, so let's move on to 7 p.m. and you see that by 7 p.m. the thunderstorms have moved just to the east of Nebraska, and we're seeing the thunderstorms now approach the western portion of Iowa, and we're seeing maybe Kansas City could get involved in some thunderstorm activity. While I don't think it will be as enhanced further southward, because there won't be as much colder air dipping that far south to induce a lot of convection for a very potent severe weather to occur further southward. There's still certainly a possibility of maybe an isolated severe thunderstorm or two. So even further southward, right around Kansas City, you need to pay close attention to this. But the main threat will be throughout Iowa, throughout Des Moines, where you could see the potential of damaging winds and tornadoes, and it should approach you guys, I'd say, right around in Des Moines, right around maybe 8 to 9 p.m. Tonight, which is concerning, because you certainly don't want to experience a severe weather threat at night where you can't really see what's going on, and especially during a tornado in Iowa. So you definitely need to pay close attention to the warnings issued in your area, and as soon as you see a tornado warning, take cover. It's no use to look outside during the nighttime where it's going to be very difficult to see. It's better to be safe than sorry and just take cover as soon as you see a tornado warning. And then you see that right around 10 p.m. the thunderstorms do approach the Minneapolis area, so you could experience severe weather over there. And now it's approaching the Mississippi River Valley, pretty much hugging the Mississippi River Valley by the 10 p.m. point. And then by around 1 a.m. we should see the severe weather threat subside, because of course as nighttime comes, the we begin to see a lot less instability in the atmosphere because the temperatures begin to cool down throughout the warmer area, throughout the warmer sector, to a point where it can't hold as much water vapor, and there won't be as much energy associated with the air molecules for enough convection to occur to lift a lot of that water vapor up. So the severe weather threat should subside, and the good news is that this severe weather threat should only last till today, because by tomorrow, this low pressure system should primarily move to the northeast and not really bring much of any more severe weather throughout the United States, at least associated with this trough. So that's definitely good news that it should last only for today, but you still want to stay prepared throughout the Midwest for a possibility of damaging winds and tornadoes. Next, let's take a look at the convective available potential energy levels forecasted by the GFS model, because that's going to be huge to determine how much convective available potential energy there is. And you see that while there isn't a ton, you see that there is certainly just enough for a lot of lift to occur, as we're seeing convective available potential energy equivalent to around 600 joules per kilogram, which is considered a lot, especially during the winter time. And you see that we're seeing a lot of convective available potential energy throughout Texas, where we're seeing the pretty much this trough absorb a lot of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. So that certainly will help energize the storm and create just a very potent severe weather threat. So you need to keep that in mind. And if you take a look at the wind shear to see how potent this severe weather threat you will be, you see that we do see some areas where the wind shear is in the yellows, where it's around 100 knots, which is very strong and will certainly induce a chance of tornadoes. So you need to pay close attention to that throughout the Midwest for a very potent severe weather and tornado threat. But the good news is that this shouldn't last for very long, which will as by tomorrow this should pretty much move out of the United States. So it won't be much of anything to worry about beyond today, which is certainly good news. But now let's move on to our next topics, which are the two major snowstorms that are going to impact the West Coast as well as the Northeast. Let's begin by talking about this next potential Northeast snowstorm that could dump up to a foot of snow in some areas. So if we're continuing to move forward based on what the GFS model is saying, you see that as the trough moves northeastward, while I did say that when it came to impacts that it won't bring much of any more severe weather or any sort of weather event to the United States as this moves northeastward, well, it will bring behind it is a strong northwesterly flow, and that could induce more pronounced jet stream dip for a more unstable environment to occur in the United States for our next major snowstorm to occur right around the northeast, because you see that as this moves northeastward, we see that strong northwesterly flow, and it certainly is bringing down it's bringing a more pronounced jet stream dip throughout the United States, which will set up for our next potential major snowstorm to develop right around the Midwest and bring heavy snow to the Northeast, because you see that a Clipper system will move on the backside of this storm, and we will see a pronounced jet stream dip just to the west of this low pressure system developing, and that will create our next snowstorm. And as you can see, the snow approaches northeast, and we see heavy snowfall at times where we do see a darker shades of blue, and it's impacting a lot of areas in the Northeast. Albany is getting involved, even Boston is getting involved in some snow. Buffalo, New York is getting involved in some snow, and pretty much a lot of the Northeast is getting involved, like Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And yesterday I did say that there might be a possibility that the snow moves to our southward, so maybe to the point where it has a possibility of impacting New York City. However, it's now, since the forecast is around 3 days out, I will say that this track further southward is becoming less and less likely, especially since both of the main computer models haven't really changed much at all since yesterday. So it seems like both of the main computer models have high confidence regarding this snowstorm, that we're primarily going to see the heaviest snow for northward, so New York City and places where southward will miss out pretty much on all the snow, as the heaviest snow should be pretty much around Boston and further northward. So you need to pay close attention to this throughout the Northeast, since it is likely you will experience a major snowstorm. And you see that we're seeing heavier snow, and this could dump maybe up to a foot of snow in some areas in the Northeast. Now, let's take a look at what the GFS model is forecasting when it comes to the total snowfall accumulation. And as you can see, it's bringing quite a large area of heavier snow, where we're seeing a large area of 6 to 12 inches of snow just north of Boston. And Boston, by the way, is experiencing right around 3 to 6 inches of snow, which would be considered the first major snowstorm for you guys of the 2021-2022 winter season. So you need to pay close attention to that and prepare accordingly, because 3 to 6 inches of snow is something you don't want to underestimate in the Boston area. And then just further northward, you see that the area is primarily right around 6 to 12 inches of snow, and it's over a large area, so this will be a major snowstorm for you guys. You need to prepare accordingly as well in the northern United States. But I'd say just south of the Interstate 90 corridor, it's primarily a rain event where you will receive little to no accumulation of snow. So this should primarily affect the areas further northward, and there's definitely a lot more confidence now, especially since the European model is completely agreeing with what the GFS model is saying regarding the amount of snow. Because you see, if we were to continue to move forward, they bring the snow in pretty much the exact same area. The European model is still leading towards a track further southward, to where maybe Hartford gets involved, and the extreme northern portions of the New York City metropolitan area do get involved. But you see that still the heaviest snow is right around the northern United States, and it's still bringing an area of like 6 to 10 inches of snow, which is a little less than the GFS model, but it's still right around the ballpark when it comes to snow totals, and at least the area where the heaviest snow will be located. So there's fairly high confidence regarding the trajectory of the storm. What really is a little uncertain is how much snow exactly. Really all depends on how powerful this low pressure system is, and that depends on how much unstable air there is. Because if there's a little bit more instability, then we're more likely to see a more potent storm with more convection surrounding the center of circulation, and that should create a faster rate of precipitation that will lead to higher snow totals. But the same could be said if there was a less pronounced jet stream dip, where there's less unstable air, and as a result less convection for a faster than usual precipitation to occur. So if there were less of a jet stream dip, we'd see smaller snow totals. It's still a little uncertain, but what's mostly certain is that we will experience a major snowstorm throughout the Northeast. So you need to prepare, I'd say, because it's pretty likely, because the forecast is now only around 3 days out. So there's still so you guys need to prepare throughout the Northeast for a major snowstorm. And in terms of timing, this should begin, I'd say, right around late Saturday into early Sunday for a lot of the Northeast. So you need to prepare for that in the Northeast. But now let's move on to the West Coast snowstorm. And as you can see, there's going to be another trough moving through the West Coast that will bring snow to higher elevations. And this is on top of the snow you just experienced from this first trough moving through that's currently bringing severe weather to the Midwest. So you're going to just experience a lot of snow. It will be a good week for skiing if you're into that throughout the West Coast, as we're seeing a lot of snow. You see that California should still receive heavy snowfall, but I'd say by the 36-hour mark, this low pressure system should pretty much dissipate, as there isn't going to really be enough instability, and this low pressure system isn't really strong enough to maintain its strength as it heads further eastward. If you were to take a look at the snowfall forecast regarding this next snowstorm for the West Coast, you see that throughout California, the consensus is that around 1 to 2 feet of snow will fall, which certainly isn't as much as last snowstorm, but still will be add on top of the 7 to 8 feet of snow you experience in the higher elevations of California. So this will be considered a lost snow for you guys. It is for anyone pretty much. And you see that in the Cascades, you're still experiencing a good area of 6 to 12 to maybe 3 to 6 inches. And for most of Nevada, Oregon, as well as Idaho, you're experiencing a good area of 3 to 6 inches and maybe 1 to 3 inches so. So you need to prepare for that throughout the West Coast, as the confidence is high. Both of the computer models are favoring a major snowstorm for the West Coast, so make sure to prepare along the West Coast for a major snowstorm for the next few days. But the good news is that this should pretty much dissipate very early, so this won't be a very long duration event for the West Coast. So make sure to keep that in mind throughout the West Coast. And here's my forecast regarding the snowfall and the severe weather threat for the Midwest, the West Coast, and the Northeast for this week. So in the Northeast, I'm expecting a large area of 6 to 12 inches of snow. I'd say Boston is right around borderline between 3 to 6 and maybe a little bit more than 6 inches or so. So you need to pay close attention to that in the Boston area. But you see Albany is getting involved in 6 to 12 inches of snow. Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, 6 to 12 inches of snow as well. But northern Maine should miss out on some of the snow since the bulk of the moisture should be further southward. So I'm expecting right around 3 to 5 inches. And taking a look at the Midwest, I'm expecting an extreme severe weather threat to occur, an extreme tornado outbreak to occur right on Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And this is very concerning, especially since we already saw what it did, a major severe weather outbreak did to Kentucky, where dozens of people died, unfortunately. So we're hoping for the best regarding this tornado outbreak, but make sure to prepare for the worst right now in the Midwest, as an extreme severe weather outbreak is likely for tonight throughout the Midwest. And taking a look further westward, I'm expecting around 1 to 2 feet of snow in the higher elevations of California, 6 to 12 right around the Cascade Mountain ranges, and 3 to 5 right around Idaho and Nevada, and extending to the higher elevations of the Rocky Mountains as well. So this is my forecast. Make sure to prepare for snow along the west and east coast, but make sure, more importantly, to prepare in the Midwest for a potentially major and life-threatening tornado outbreak for tonight. But yeah, guys, I guess that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. And I hope you guys have a good day.